Welcome to Man in America, a voice of reason in a world gone mad. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. Tragedy struck our nation this week as a psychotic trans person shot up a Catholic school. 2 kids were killed, and there were a bunch of other injuries, mostly children and a few adults as well. Now, when I first saw this happen, of course, I was saddened by it. I'm a father. I hate anytime I see children being harmed, especially killed in something like this. But as I saw the news surrounding it unfold, I became more curious as to what was really going on here. Of course, there were the topics of people saying, look, the mainstream media is not even calling this person, they're not identifying the fact that he's trans. And we've seen these trends in a lot of these shooters, specifically ones who are targeting children in schools, happen to be very confused about their gender, whether they're non-binary or trans or whatever it is. And so I see a lot of folks calling for, more looks into the health of the trans community and saying, look, this is a mental illness. And so you see that angle. You see people talking about how the mainstream media is not acknowledging this person was a trans, and there's that angle. Then, of course, you see the gun rights angle, and people saying, look, especially more liberals saying, look, this is why we can't have guns. This is why I need to have more strict gun laws. And it's what we've seen over and over and over again with these mass shootings. You see the same type of narratives emerge, but one of the big ones is obviously the push for removing guns. Now, under Trump and the current administration, they've shown a pretty good stance in the Second Amendment. Like if this was Newsom as president at this point, we'd probably see some pretty sweeping actions being taken at a federal level, which would not be good, obviously. But as I kept digging into this, I started seeing more abnormalities and things that just didn't really add up at all. And then as I was doing research for this show, something really crazy happened where I found this really important piece of information about the parents of Robert. And then that piece of information was gone a couple of hours later, which I'll get into later in the show today. So there's something happening here. There's things that are trying to be covered up. And just my curious nature, if you say, Seth, don't look over there in the closet, as soon as you step out of the room, I'm looking in the closet. That's just how I am. I've never been one to respect that kind of authority that just says, this is the official narrative. Do not question it. I'm the kind of guy that just questions everything. So of course I'm going to question the official narrative, especially when it's surrounding an event like this. Now, before I start the show, just a quick few notes. First off, every show that I do is done as a podcast as well. So if you prefer to listen instead of watch, just go to your favorite podcast app, search for Man in America. You'll find me there. Also, if you're watching on Rumble, thank you for supporting a free speech platform, but also make sure you subscribe to the channel. And my final request is hit that like button. No, seriously, right now, take a moment and just hit that like button. You're going to feel really good if you do. Thank you. Okay, so now let's go ahead and jump into the show. So first, let me start with the official story. This is on the New York Post. I'll read through a few bits about this. Minneapolis school shooter ID'd as trans woman Robin Westman as apparent manifesto included kill Trump. A few just notes to add in here. It says the deranged gunman who slaughtered 2 children and injured at least 17 others at a Catholic school in Minneapolis has been identified as a transgender woman, as disturbing videos posted by the shooter show a handwritten manifesto and kill Donald Trump and for the children scrawled on gun magazines. Robin Westman, formerly Robert Westman, opened fire through stained glass windows of a church at the Annunciation Catholic School, where he attended during a celebratory back-to-school mass filled with children around 8:30 a.m. on Wednesday. Just hours before the cowardly massacre, Westman, 23, posted a series of twisted videos on YouTube, which includes a manifesto, which the police confirmed at a press conference. And there's Westman's photo. There's one of the various screenshots from the manifesto that were posted with names written on them, in other kinds of things, which we'll get into that. Sponsored by BlackRock. We'll talk about those. It says in one 20-minute video, Westman flips through the disturbing handwritten manifesto. Much of it is written in a homespun code that uses Cyrillic characters and English phonetic words. So that's really the overarching story, right? Is this guy, Robert, 23 years old, planned ahead of time, had a manifesto, put videos about it, went outside this church during the Mass for Children, and just started shooting through the windows, attempting to kill as many as possible. And then he took his own life. Now, when these events happen, of course, they could just be completely random. This could be a person, Robert, he could have been someone who was abused as a child. Maybe he was abused because he went to the school. His mother worked at that school. Maybe he was abused by someone at that school, a principal, gym teacher, who knows? And maybe he had this deep-seated trauma, and this was the only way he could express it, is he went and did something absolutely terrible and atrocious. That would be the simple story that you could say makes sense. But the more you look into it, you look at who his parents are, you look at the parents of the two children that were killed, you look at the kind of jobs that his dad has had and other different connections, there's a lot of very, very strange things that make it seem much more complex than the more simple story that might present itself as. But before we go into the details, I want to take a step back, not too far back in history, to 1991. A man named Bill Cooper, or Milton William Cooper, wrote a book called Behold a Pale Horse. I bought this book probably 7 or 8 years ago. This was one of the foundational books for me in my own awakening. Okay, so I'll read just a quick brief about it because I want to highlight a certain page in here. It says, Bill Cooper, former U.S. Naval Intelligence Briefing Team member, reveals information that remains hidden from the public eye. This information has been kept in top secret government files since the 40s. His audiences hear the truth unfold as he writes about the assassination of JFK, the war on drugs, the secret government, and UFOs. Bill's a lucid, rational, and powerful speaker whose intent is to inform and empower his audience. Standing room is only normal. So Bill went and gave these talks, right? So I'll continue a little bit here. It said that, okay. So his presentation and information transcend partisan affiliations as he clearly addresses issues in a way that has a striking impact on listeners of all backgrounds and interests. He has spoken to many groups throughout the U.S. and has appeared regularly on many talk radio shows and television. In 1988, Bill decided to talk due to events that then taking place worldwide, events that he had seen plans for back in the early 70s. Bill correctly predicted the lowering of the Iron Curtain, the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the invasion of Panama. So if you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. If you want to understand a lot more about the shadow government, the deep state, the cabal, whatever you want to refer to them as, it's a very, very foundational work. And what's great about the book is that it's full of just photocopies of the actual documents. It's not just the ramblings of a madman. It's extremely well researched and well presented. But I want to go to one particular page in here. And this is in chapter 12 called The Secret Government, page 225, if you have the book and you want to reference this. Because he talks about mass shootings in here. He says, the government encouraged the manufacture and importation of military firearms for the criminal to use. This is intended to foster a feeling of insecurity, which would lead the American people to voluntarily disarm themselves by passing laws against firearms. Using drugs and hypnosis on mental patients in a process called Orion, the CIA inculcated the desire in these people to open fire on schoolyards and thus inflame the anti-gun lobby. This plan is well underway and so far is working perfectly. The middle class is begging the government to do away with the Second Amendment. So he talks about Project Orion, CIA. It's also very similar to Operation Mockingbird, MK Ultra. So if you've looked into MK Ultra, you're probably familiar with it. It was government state-run mind control. Kathy O'Brien, who's one of the many MK Ultra survivors and whistleblowers I've had on their show before, details exactly what happened. And in essence, it was a CIA program to create Manchurian candidates, to create basically remote controlled people that could carry out assassinations, that could collect state secrets. They would oftentimes create these MK Ultra victims that they could use to seduce presidents or leaders and get information from them, or assassinate them when they're unsuspecting, say lying in bed next to them. And it was very closely tied to satanic ritual abuse. And if you dig into the darker bowels of the CIA and some of these agencies, you realize that there's a lot of crossover with satanic and occult practices and agendas. And so if you look into the history of satanic ritual abuse, have you ever laid awake at night with your mind racing, your muscles tense, and no matter what you try, you just can't fall asleep? Stress, anxiety, or tight muscles can shut down your body's natural sleep switch. You're exhausted, but your brain just won't turn off. That is where Perfect Sleep Max from Perfect Origins comes in. It's not just another melatonin pill. It's a complete formula designed to help you relax and sleep from multiple angles. So L-theanine and GABA quiet your mind and reduce stress. Usuna-purines and 5-HTP support dopamine and serotonin to lift your mood and deepen rest. Magnesium relaxes your muscles. Melatonin resets your sleep cycle. And philodendron root calms inflammation. It's clean, non-GMO, and built to give you real sleep support. One bottle is $39, or you can save with 3 to 6 month bundles, and AutoShip brings it down to just $29 a bottle with free shipping. And every order is backed by a 180-day money-back guarantee. So go to perfectorigins.com and use promo code MIA to save 25%. That's perfectorigins.com, promo code MIA. A lot of the mechanisms used in MKUltra are the exact same ones used in satanic SRA rituals, right? Satanic ritual abuse. It's a process of fracturing the mind through torture, through the use of psychedelics and drugs. It basically scrambles someone's brain so much that their brain starts to compartmentalize. And each of those compartments within the brain, they can actually install these personalities that can be activated, but those compartments can't access the other one. So that's how they could have someone that might seem like a Marilyn Monroe, for instance, this beautiful young woman. She's just the life of a party. But then when she hears these certain words, say she's on a mission, this other side of her, this other part of her brain emerges that maybe she's not even conscious of, that carries out a different mission. And so oftentimes when I see, especially these instances of these mass shootings, I wonder, was this person part of some sort of controlled operative? Were they part of some sort of SRA family? Were they part of the MKUltra abuse system, which is still going on to this day? But I'm going to continue here with what he says. He says, I have found that these events have indeed happened all over the country. In every instance that I've investigated, the incident at the women's school in Canada. Now keep in mind, this is written in 1991, so these are older shootings. The shopping center incident in Canada, the Stockton massacre, California massacre, and the murder of Rabbi Meir Kahan, the shooters were all ex-mental patients or were current mental patients who were all on the drug Prozac. This drug, when taken in certain doses, increases the serotonin level in the patient, causing extreme violence. Couple that with a post-hypnotic suggestion or control through an electronic brain implant or microwave or ELF intrusion, and you get mass murder, ending in every case with the suicide of the perpetrator. Exhume the bodies of the murderers and check for a brain implant. I think you're going to be surprised. In every case, the name of the murderer's doctor or mental treatment facility has been withheld. So this is very interesting because what he's saying here is that it has a direct crossover with the drug use, right? You talk about the SSRAs. Prozac is one that he mentions here, but he talks about how these people are current mental patients, ex-mental patients, or current mental patients. And so if you look at someone that is a transgender, which a lot of folks would really think of that as being a mental illness, not that different than me saying, I'm actually a moose. So I identify as a moose, call me a moose. If you met me and I started making moose noises at you, you'd probably say this guy's a nutcase. He's insane. He thinks he's a moose. Well, a lot of people have the same perspective over a person who's trans. They feel like they're in the wrong body. They look at it as a mental illness. A lot of them, I would assume, I don't have the exact statistics, but I would assume that a lot of people that end up going through trans operations, or that end up being cross-dressing or whatever, are probably on varying kinds of antidepressants or psychotic medications, which probably help perpetuate the confusion and the depression and the mood swings, etc. But it's also interesting how he says that the perpetrator almost always commits suicide, right? He says, ending in every case with the suicide of the perpetrator, which is what we saw here. So we'll review this again at the very end of the show. But I think it's very important to start with the analysis and start with the information that was given to us by Bill Cooper back in 1991. Okay, so let's start digging into the anomalies that I found with this. I'm just gonna walk you through the information that I found. I'm not here to try to convince you of any particular agenda or outcome. I'm just going to walk you through the research that I did, what I came across, and you can make up your own mind. Is just this some nutcase that went on a shooting spree, or was this perhaps part of a much larger conspiracy? So we're going to start by looking at the parents of not just the shooter, but also the two children that were killed. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not suggesting that there were no deaths, or I'm not saying the whole thing was a giant hoax or a false, I think it was a false flag, but that's a different story. But again, I'm just looking at the information that we have here. So here's a post on Twitter. It says, how crazy is it that the parents of the slain children are Mike Moisky, who's the vice president of C.H. Robinson, a global logistics company, and Jesse Merkel of Excel Energy, a grid engineering company. And the alleged shooter's relative is James Westman, who works with ESRI, which I'll get into. But how they all work in the same orbit. They are all companies that benefit from advancing grid surveillance. Probably just a coincidence. It is interesting, though, that the three parents that we're talking about here, the two fathers of the two kids that were killed and the father of the shooter, all have very interesting jobs at companies that cross over heavily with the government. So Jesse Merkel, he's an engineer at Excel Energy, is an energy company, but they do have a lot of government contracting. The other person, Michael Moisky, is the vice president for this company called C.H. Robinson, which does a lot of logistics for the government. I looked this stuff up. But then the father of the shooter, this is where it gets really interesting. Okay, so here's the father, supposed father, which I'll get into that, James Westman. So James Westman works at this company called ESRI. Now, this is a post put out by John Cullen. It's a great person to follow on X. So he actually John Cullen used to work at ESRI, and he developed a lot of the technology they used back when he was with Oracle. I won't get into that right now. But so James Westman is at ESRI. So what is ESRI? So ESRI is a mapping company, to kind of put it very, very simply. But look at this. This is an article I found from 2012. This is ESRI part of the military intelligence sector? Okay. So here is a picture of the ESRI booth right next to Boeing, which is interesting, at a recent GeoInt convention next to major military intelligence contractors. Okay, so what are the odds that this shooter's supposed father works at a company that is a major contractor with the DoD? Again, it's interesting because, as we talked about, a lot of these programs came out of our own government, the CIA, the intelligence agencies. A lot of this stuff ties into that. So you always have to look for these. It's like, why? Just, kind of asking this a random question. Okay, so we have three different fathers here, all in pretty prominent jobs with companies that do government subcontracting, and the father of the actual shooter at a job that does a significant amount of government contracting specifically for the Department of Defense. So these are three fathers, the three significant fathers of the entire shooting. The father of the shooter, the two fathers of the children that were killed. If I look at all of the friends or people that I know, and I threw three darts at the list of, say, 500 people that I knew, there's a good chance I'd find, okay, this guy's a manager at a restaurant. This guy owns a small landscaping company. This guy's a contractor that does plumbing. This guy owns a pool company. Right? Those are your average jobs. So the fact that all three of them worked in companies that had ties to contracting with the government, again, I'm not trying to say anything in particular. I'm just looking at the information. It's a strange pattern that these three people just so happen to have those jobs, specifically the kid's father. It's very, very strange. Okay, so going back to ESRI. Okay, so here you go. So the ArcGIS technology from ESRI turns intelligence data into geographic knowledge that informs decision-making for a wide range of missions. Their geospatial technology is uniquely qualified to handle many forms of intelligence, such as data from satellite imagery and information collected using handheld devices. Now, this is back in 2011. Okay, continuing. So it says, perhaps a better question then is, to what degree and in what ways is ESRI part of the military intelligence sector? I think it's MIC. So using open source records at usaspending.gov, we can see that ESRI has received $736 million in government contracts since 2001. So this is only 2012, I think 2011. So in 10 years, they've received almost $1 billion in government contracts. 8 of its top 10 awards were with the DoD. The largest was for $15 million, for a total of $405 million. So again, it's just strange, and you can see it's intelligence. I'm assuming that the CIA, maybe the NSA, other agencies will be using this technology. So the fact that kid's dad I think he's worked at the company for 29 years, if I'm not mistaken. So almost 3 decades working at a company. Actually, no, I'll check. Let me go back really quickly. Yeah, there you go. 29 years and 7 months that his father has worked at this company. Strange coincidence. Okay, so getting into his parents, though. This is a very good post by Whitney. She says, is it just me, or does the shooter not look like either of his parents? Maybe you could see a resemblance in his mother, longer nose, facial features. But if you look at him next to his dad, I mean, I'm not a facial kind of pattern expert, but the guy looks nothing like his father. The eyes, the eyebrows, the nose, the mouth, the shape of the head, like I see almost basically zero resemblance. Now, what's interesting though, is that there was a post that someone put out and I came across that they had gone and done some research on the parents. So you can go to, there's a website right here. Okay. This is the Minnesota Judicial Branch, where you can search for court records online. And this is where something very, very strange happened. So someone put this post out saying they found this case, right? So this is a document that was filed in 2012. It was documenting the divorce, the dissolution, like I said, technically a dissolution, between the marriage of Mary Grace Westman, his supposed mother, and James Allen Westman, who is his supposed father. So this was filed in 2012. If you look at the case type, it says dissolution without child. Okay, what does that mean? So a dissolution without children is the formal legal process for ending a marriage when the couple has no minor children. Okay, that's key. It's when the couple has no minor children. So let's just say that when they divorced, they had a 20-year-old, or say that Robert was 20 years old. That would make sense. The dissolution, it could say dissolution without children, and that would be accurate. However, Robin Westman was born on June 17th in 2002. So if he was born on June 17th, 2002, he would have been 10 years old when his parents had a dissolution. The case type, as far as I understand, there's no way the case type could have said dissolution without children. The court would have had to, in the dissolution process, had to acknowledge that there was a child and that arrangements were made for custody, child payments, etc. So this is really, really strange, because here we have a copy of the court case saying that the supposed mother and father of Robert Westman had a dissolution on September 10th, 2012, when Robert Westman, the gunman, would have been 10 years old. Doesn't make sense. So, are we seeing evidence here that those weren't actually his parents? Are they foster parents? It doesn't make any sense. Now, here's what gets really, really strange. So I went to the Minnesota Courts Record Online, where you can go and you can search. And I went on there and I did a search. This is only about 3 or 4 hours ago. I did a search for Mary Grace Westman. When I searched for Mary Grace Westman, there were 5 records that appeared. There were 5 court records. 3 or 4 of them were, like it was like a speeding ticket. One was, I think, not following, adhering to a traffic sign. But one of the cases that I found when I searched was this, because I wanted to verify. I saw this is a screenshot on Twitter. I wanted to verify, is this an actual document that I could find on the portal, of the court records in Minnesota? I found this exact same document. I found it. The detailing is result 4 or 5. I told you there were 5 documents. Okay, actually, there you go. So Mary Grace Westman and James Allen Westman. Actually, I'm going to pull up really quickly here. I'm just going to do the search. I'm going to show you what happened. So let me pull up the actual case search, and I'll do it with you right now. Okay, so here's the case search. So Mary Grace Westman. Let's come down here. Let's do a search. Let's do find. Okay. Right here now, it's showing 3 of 3 results. So this right here it says 4 of 5. When I did this search, maybe 3 or 4 hours ago, I got 5 results. One of these results was the dissolution without a child of Mary Grace Westman and James Allen Westman. When I just did the search again, it only shows us 3 results. Okay. Here we have a speeding ticket. Here we have a parking where signs prohibit. And it's only showing us, in the first case is a speeding ticket. So we've got speeding ticket, and not parking where a sign prohibited. So in the past couple of hours, for some reason, they scrubbed 2 of the court records from the supposed mother of this trans shooter. Now, thankfully, I wish I would have screenshotted the whole page, but thankfully someone had already done that. Whereas we can see, and again, I can verify this. A couple of hours ago, I searched and I found 5 records. One of these records was the dissolution of the marriage between Mary Grace Westman and James Allen Westman. So in the past couple of hours, this has disappeared from the internet. They've removed this. You can no longer find it. Why would that happen? Why would that be the case? Why would they hide this information from us? Well, one thing you could say is because that information, you could say, proves that this is not their child. So there's something very, very suspicious that's going on now. I mean, the thing is, it was suspicious already when I found the dissolution, I found the case, and I found the birthday. It's like, Robert was 10 years old when his parents were divorced, or when they had their marriage dissolved. That was already suspicious. But now that they removed that case and you can't even find it, it's even more suspicious. This is wild. This is absolutely wild. But so there's a handful of things I'm going to still kind of continue to go over here. So one is that, and I guess make of that what you will, right? I don't know what it is. I don't know why. I don't know why he looks nothing like his father. I don't know why they're hiding the dissolution record that shows that they did not have him as a minor child at the dissolving of their marriage. This is really strange stuff going on here. But also, looking at Robert himself, he posted these very strange cryptic videos that he'd pre-recorded and had them to schedule the post on YouTube shortly before the shooting took place. Here's one of them. So this is a drawing that Robin Westman, the Annunciation Catholic School shooter, had in his manifesto. He saw himself as possessed by a demon. So here's a picture of him that he drew. This is in his journal, of him standing in a bathroom mirror with an AR-15 strapped across his back, handgun on his hip, with some sort of cloud of confusion over his head, staring into the mirror and seeing some sort of demon or Moloch or satanic creature staring back at him with his skull and crossbones. Do you want to know what the future holds? Just watch what the elites are doing. They're not piling in the tech stocks or chasing crypto bubbles. They're buying gold, silver, land, and they're building bunkers. Why? Because they know that the reset's coming and paper and digital assets won't survive it. That's why I follow their lead. But I don't wait until the crowd catches on. I already hold metals that I can touch. There's no passwords, no middlemen, no permission slips. Because when the system resets, those metals will still have value. So here's the question. Do you want to be one of the ones scrambling for scraps or the one holding what everyone else needs? See yourself in that moment and choose your role now. Go to goldwithseth.com and request your free guide or call Noble Gold at 877-646-5347. The people who act before the headlines are the ones who own the future. Again, that's goldwithseth.com or 877-646-5347. Obviously, this kid was mentally disturbed. And if you look at what we talked about earlier and the CIA and satanic ritual abuse and the MK Ultra victims and the amounts of drugs and the SSRIs that these people are on, which are very strongly correlated to these mass shootings. And now we've got an example, a picture of him drawing, seeing himself as a demon. Like, what did this poor soul suffer in his early years? And again, maybe he's just completely lost his stuff. He's had too many drugs and played too many video games. Yeah, but maybe he was part of some sort of CIA, MK Ultra, SRA stuff. I don't know. It's strange, though, when you put all these things together and you see drawings like this. It just doesn't make sense. What's also interesting, though, in terms of questioning, it's like, okay, was this part of some larger operation? So here's a post from Larry Cook. Okay, so this is a screenshot of the video that Robert did. He made a video of him, kind of scrolling through his journal and showing all of his notes and really revealing his entire diary to people ahead of the mass shooting. He posted directly on his channel. Now, Larry Cook made a good point. He says, I've worked in video production for over 30 years. This is a very unique camera angle and not easily created top down. The lighting is also correct. This is a professionally produced video that most people wouldn't do or know how to do. Again, it makes an interesting point. And like, I've obviously done a lot of lighting setups and I've worked with lighting, and I agree. Like, I used to be a jewelry photographer, so I know a little bit about lighting, and it's not easy. Now, it's not hard and fast. You can go on to YouTube and you can watch tutorials, and a lot of people that are doing blogging and food reviews, they've learned these techniques. So I'm not going to say it's impossible, especially this day and age. However, it's not very easy. Though it might seem simple, it's not easy to set up an exact overhead shot like this and to not have any light, any shadows, any harsh shadows, because what happens is that, right, so I have my lights facing me, right? So if I move my hand in front of this, it's casting a shadow. So it's really not easy to do what this person did, what Robert did. And then also, if you look in the replies to Larry Cook's post, there's a lot of other professionals that said the exact same thing. They said, look, I've been in video production for 20 years, et cetera, et cetera. They said, yes, I agree. This is not easy to do. So it makes you think, like, did Robert shoot this? Did he study videography? Did he study techniques of how to do this? Did he have someone helping him? I don't have the answers, but it's another thing. This adds to the overall suspicion. Now, continuing, here we go again. There was all this strange writing on the weapons, on the magazines. This one in particular says sponsored by BlackRock. Now, look, maybe, Robert is just kind of mocking everybody, and he sees the amount of hatred and distrust in these big companies like BlackRock. But again, it's just strange. It says sponsored by BlackRock. And you could say this, okay, from one perspective, you could say, well, he's just some lunatic and he put that just for fun on there. But then you could also ask the question of, are they telling us what's really going on? Are they showing us who the sponsor really is? I don't know. I mean, it's fair to ask the question, right? It's my job is just to ask questions, and you're asking questions as well. But there was also a lot of other strange writing on his weapons. He had writing about killing Donald Trump. He had stuff written about it was, against the Jews. And I think it had one thing that said 6 million isn't enough, or wasn't enough. And supposedly he was kind of pro-Hitler. But what's strange is that if his weapons reflect a hatred towards Jews, why would he go shoot up a Christian school or a Catholic school? Doesn't make sense. And even if he was praising Hitler, well, Hitler wasn't against the Christians, he was against the Jews. So why, if he's, kind of, people say, oh, he was, praising Hitler as a kid, like maybe it would fit the narrative if he shut up like a synagogue or something, but it just, again, it doesn't make sense. There's all these things that just don't add up. And again, here we go. Remember just Mr. Thomas Matthew Crooks, the supposed assassination attempting guy that tried to shoot Trump in Pennsylvania and Butler. Well, that guy, again, update BlackRock Connection says Thomas Matthew Crooks, shooter who tried to assassinate President Donald Trump, was featured in a BlackRock commercial in 2023. So you have that happening, which that was strange. I covered that a bunch when that assassination attempt happened. I did multiple live shows just like this, digging into it. All kinds of anomalies, a lot of strange stuff, just like what we're seeing with Robert Westman. But then, okay, so you have Thomas Crooks in a BlackRock commercial. You have Robert Westman, sponsored by BlackRock. Now, maybe he was following the Robert Crooks story and he thought, oh, that was cool. I wish I was in a BlackRock commercial. Well, maybe I'll write sponsored by BlackRock on my AR magazine. Maybe. Very, very strange, though. But one thing also I'm going to show you as we're kind of coming to conclusion here is the predictive programming. This is also strange. So this is a post by Mr. Truthbomb. He says the plot of the movie Weapons, which was released on August 8th of this year, so it just came out this month, follows the seemingly inexplicable case of 17 children from the same classroom who mysteriously run away on the same night at the same 2:17 a.m. and disappeared. It says in a dream sequence in the movie, one of the characters, while looking at the house from across the street, sees a giant rifle, likely an AR-15, that begins to materialize in the cloudy sky above, slowly forming into a complete weapon with the 2:17 timestamp glowing on the barrel. 19 days after the release of Weapons and shortly after Trump demanded RICO charges against George Soros and his son, a tragic mass shooting occurred at the Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis, claiming the lives of 2 children and injuring 17 others. So you have that 217, which was the initial number reported. I think it's now reporting is it's 18 injured, but the initial report first day or two was 217. So it says the alleged shooter, a trans man, Robert Westman, reportedly posted a video threatening to kill Donald Trump minutes before the attack. Some have noted a resemblance between Westman and the killer depicted in Weapons. The movie's plot centered on mind control and transforming people into weapons, reminiscent of MKUltra, adds an eerie layer to the incident given the timing and circumstances. These coincidences are striking, though they may be purely coincidental. That's true. They could be purely coincidental. But again, so here we have it. Let me reload this real quick for you so I can make these images. There we go. So 2 are dead, 17 injured. This is a picture of what would say yes would be an AR-15. This movie that came out a few weeks before the incident with 217 written, glowing on the barrel of the gun. And even the director said that he was kind of confused about kind of adding that there wasn't really a strong rationale for why this scene was put in. He was curious what the audience response was. And a lot of people were very confused by this when they watched the movie. Like, what's with the AR-15 with the 217 flying over the sky of the house at night? It's very, very strange. And again, you have that 217. So if you look into predictive programming, you look into numerology, these things are rarely accidental. And I know it's far-fetched, but we know the CIA has remote viewing, task force. This is publicly known. You can dig in and see it. Did someone in the CIA look into the future and see the kill count or the kill and injury count? And maybe they saw the headlines, they brought that back in and worked it into some sort of programming going into the movies. I don't know. But it's a strange coincidence nonetheless that this movie just came out. It's about MKUltra, about kids disappearing from the classroom. And there's 217 is the important number in the movie. And a random AR-15 gun, which is the same exact gun that was used to kill 2 kids and injure 17 kids at the mass shooting, as we can see, it's very strange. Now, what's also weird is let's take a look at what the killer looks like. So in this movie, Weapons, let's see what the killer looks like. But first, let's take a look at what the shooter looks like in real life. Robert Westman, long orange hair, kind of strange looking. Well, here's the killer in the Weapons movie. It's odd. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe everything that I'm telling you in the show today is just a coincidence. But maybe it's not. Maybe there are much larger forces at play here. I don't know. I can't prove it. Probably will never be able to. But it's important for us to ask these questions. In conclusion, I want to summarize, go back to the original words of Bill Cooper in Behold a Pale Horse, and give it one more read at the very end of this journey we've been through. He says, the government encouraged the manufacture and importation of military firearms for the criminals to use. This is intended to foster a feeling of insecurity, which would lead the American people to voluntarily disarm themselves by passing laws against firearms. Using drugs and hypnosis on mental patients in a process called Orion, the CIA inculcated the desire in these people to open fire on schoolyards. That's strange. They're saying that like the CIA planted the desire for these people to open fire on schoolyards and thus inflame the anti-gun lobby. This plan is well underway and so far is working perfectly. The middle class is begging the government to do away with the Second Amendment. I mean, think about it. If you wanted, say you had some sinister agenda to get the population to stand behind disarming the populace of America, what's probably the worst thing you could do with a gun to make the country hate guns? Well, is use those guns to shoot up innocent children, to shoot up schoolyards. I mean, you could say it's a brilliant plan if you're Dr. Evil and you're looking for evil ways to accomplish these agendas. But why is it that we're now having all of these trans and binary people that are probably on all kinds of psychiatric meds, that come from strange backgrounds with strange parents, with many having ties to the government and to the CIA or to the DOD, and these kids are then shooting up schoolyards? Yet in 91, Bill Cooper, one of the most important whistleblowers of the plans of the deep state and the secret government, comes out and says that the CIA basically planted the desire in these people to open fire on schoolyards and thus inflame the anti-gun lobby. And then as he continues, he says the ending in every case with the suicide of the perpetrator, which is exactly what we've seen. So that's the evidence I found just through a couple days of researching this. I'm sure a lot more is going to come out. A lot of that information comes out because of you posting in comments and sharing information. There's a lot of people that are doing research on this. And I don't have some strong conclusion. Again, maybe it was just some wacko on psychiatric meds that was abused as a kid by some person at this school, and it ruined his life and he wanted to take out on that school. Maybe that would be a plausible story. I mean, honestly, if we looked into this together and we found out that, oh my goodness, yeah, there was this example, there's a gym teacher that was abusing young children at this Catholic school during the time that Robert attended, and that caused his life to spiral, and he's on all kinds of psychiatric drugs, and like that would actually make sense. And say his mom was a guidance counselor at the school, and say his dad was a plumber, right? It would actually be a pretty easy story to believe. It's like, okay, I can see how that works. But when you put all these things together, you put the warnings from Bill Cooper, you put the ties of the parents to the military-industrial complex and to the Department of Defense, you show the fact that they're scrubbing the records of the parents. They're scrubbing the records that show, I would say almost concretely, that this is not their son. Yet no one's talking about this. It raises so many red flags to me. And that's why I'm doing the show, because I want you to see the same research I've done and you think about it. Let me know what you think. And post in the comments, let me know the research that you've done. And also make sure, again, if you're still watching, if you've lasted this far into the show and you're on Rumble, please hit that thumbs up button. Do it right now. Just hit that thumbs up button. It's going to feel so great. And it's actually really helpful. It helps me to reach more people. So it's not just some vain thing. I want lots of thumbs ups. It actually helps the algorithms to get the show out to more people. So if you enjoyed the content genuinely, then hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't enjoy it, then leave me a negative comment, right? I love reading those too. Tell me how dumb I am, or tell me I'm some sort of CIA spook, or whatever you want in the comments. I read all those comments. I've got thick skin. Trust me. But anyway, thank you for joining me for this. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And the biggest thing I can ask of you is that if you enjoyed this show, please share it with somebody else. Unfortunately, I can't have a show like this on Rumble, on YouTube, that goes viral, because I'm extremely shadow banned on YouTube, because I'm not controlled by anybody except myself and God. I'm trying my best to make sure I'm going according to His plan. But if you want to help me out, share this with somebody, because that really helps us to reach more people. All right. Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed this with you. I look forward to reading the comments. I genuinely do. Let me know what you think. If you found anything that I'm not aware of, put it in Telegram, or put it in Twitter, or put it in the comments on Rumble. I'd love to see that as well. All right. Take care. God bless. I'll see you next time. You've probably heard me talk about the importance of being prepared, and that includes having access to life-saving medicine when you need it. That's why I want to tell you about ReliableMedicines.com. They offer affordable, prescription-based meds like ivermectin, fenbendazole, hydroxychloroquine, essential antibiotics, and more, all shipped directly to your door quickly and discreetly. There's no runaround, no waiting in line, no begging your doctor. Shipping is fast, usually 7 to 15 days, and their support team is available 24/7 if you need anything. I've used them myself, and I can tell you, this is the kind of resource every family should have on hand. And just for my listeners and viewers, you can use the promo code MIA15 at checkout to get 15% off your order. So head over to ReliableMedicines.com, or just click the link in the description and stock up on life-saving medications while you still can. Again, that's ReliableMedicines.com using the promo code MIA15.